Good evening, everyone. My name is Barney Johnson. I'm a classical composer. I hope that the background sound isn't too egregious, but what am I supposed to do? I'm at this beautiful, beautiful ocean, and I finally moved out of Paris, and I'm coming to you from Le Truc plage. It's a plage, a beach, and it's called Le Truc, which literally translates as the thing. Today we're going to talk about my opera Atala, which is based on a text by Chateaubriand, which I will show you. This is the text I'm using. I'm sure there's multiple versions. It has multiple of his works, but the one I'm looking at is Atala. Okay? Now, let's look at the structure of today, because I am structured, okay? Composers are structured. We have, I forgot the talk. Introduction. We're gonna have a part one, okay, which will be the first video, and it's kind of prepping you for part two, okay? Part two is going to be, the second video is going to be me telling you the story of Atala. Beautiful, beautiful story. And then part three will be the ending of Atala. And Lord have mercy, you're gonna love this ending, okay? And I'll end with some final thoughts. So, why am I setting Atala? Two reasons. Well, one big reason. It's the power of the story, okay? It's a powerful story. And first and foremost, that power comes from the imagery. Now, imagery is notoriously hard to convey with opera because opera is sound. And they're not going to see much, they're going to hear a lot more. I'm talking about the audience. And I don't know what the budget is going to be of the opera companies that are going to produce this. There will probably be a variation depending on the resources. So any of the imagery that I'm attracted to must be conveyed through the music, which I am definitely doing. So an example of the imagery is when he's describing the landscape, which is, the story takes place in what is now Florida in like the end of the 1700s, and there's a lot of wilderness. So he talks about, you know, the magnolia trees and the groves and the oak trees and the swamps and the sounds of the birds and the different animals scurrying. And the way I do it, I can't do justice. Maybe I'll find a passage later on to do justice. But the imagery is just, your eyes bleed in a good way. My eyes bleed, like I feel cured when I read this work. So I want to capture that imagery first and foremost in the music. The other thing I love are the words and the French language, and this was written in French. This is a French author. In fact, Chateaubriand was an author very much loved by Proust, who is my favorite author. And the reason why I got into Chateaubriand is because Proust was talking about him so much. So, and Chateaubriand, and in the French language, you can achieve great power just through one or two words. Usually there's a build-up. There is a build-up, a context, but then they can say one or two words, and you understand everything. And we don't have the same capacity that I have seen in the English language, but I will look more into it. For example, there's a moment when the main character is at the bottom, the pit of despair. He believes he's been betrayed by his lover, so I just have to adjust myself for the wind. He believes he's been betrayed by his lover. He believes he's going to die, and he's sentenced to die, so he's going to die. So it's a pit of despair. And he is cursing his lover. Oh, I hate her. Oh, I'm a horrible person. Oh, how dare her. And then she comes and saves him. She takes away the chains and she saves her man. And he says one word. Well, two words if you include the definite article, or the indefinite article. But one word to capsize what she represents to him. And he says, ma libératrice. Ma libératrice. So libératrice means like liberator or savior. It doesn't work as well in English, but because in French the word libre means free, but it can mean like available, it can mean like libre service, it means self-serve, so you do the service yourself. So it's a much more general meaning, but libératrice is your savior. It's the female version of a libérateur. And with that one word, you're like, he doesn't have to say anymore. I get it. Atala is a savior. And I love that in this story. Now, setting it for an opera is very difficult. The power I feel when he refers to Atala as a liberatrice, I won't be able to convey in the music just for that one word. Because opera, it takes longer to understand the words, it takes longer to understand what's happening. I'm just going to change my angle because I don't like this wind blowing in my face, and you probably don't like it either. No, I don't like this either. So, conveying the truth that I felt in the words, I won't be able to do directly in the opera, that is for sure. But that whole, because again, like I was saying, opera takes longer to understand what's happening, to comprehend the whole situation. The ear is slower than the eyes, and you know, visually there may not be enough information for the viewer, especially if you're sitting in the back, like my mom and I do. But I do hope to convey that feeling of savior just through the overall scene, like the building up of the music, and then when he sees her and she saves him, I hope that's really present in the music. Moving on. So, let me give a synopsis of the story. So, first off, where does it take place? This story takes place, I want to get this sun, because if I don't get this sun, I'm losing out. Where's the sun? Boom, baby. There you go. This story takes place, like I was saying, like in the late 1700s, early 1800s, in what we now know as Florida. The characters pass through different, like, Native American lands, different tribes. One thing to know is, though we now consider the Native Americans one group, that was not the case back in the day, and there were actually different rival tribes, which this story does touch upon, though it's not the focus of the story. And so it takes place mostly in the wilderness, or on this kind of like, in a different America than we know now, not developed for sure. It's mostly told from the perspective of the Native Americans. And there's very little encounter with white people, the settlers, except for Father Aubry, who comes in at the very end of the story, or towards the end of the story. The characters. So there's three main characters, or three characters total. The first character, or the main character, the main character is Chactas. Okay, Chactas is probably he's Native American, he's probably in his like mid-20s, early 20s, which now we would consider as like, you know, still young, but for at this time in history, it was just like, you're considered a man. He was definitely considered like a responsible man at this point. And he's kind of, in a way, a nomad because he's estranged from his home tribe. I forget the reason. It's not talked about in this story because Chactas appears in other short stories by Chateaubriand. But he's like, and he's also been to Europe, and he's fluent in French, and he's like, I think he's met the king. He's seen like plays by Racine, a famous French playwright, and he's met with diplomats. So he's kind of presented as this ideal man who has the best of both worlds, from his Native American homeland as well as from the, quote, more civilized Europe. Don't forget, context is everything. You must be able to see things in terms of the context of the times it was written, not through our context of today. Very, very important. Not for a lens of today. And so there's Chactas. Then he meets a woman that he loves. I mean, loves this woman. Okay? And her name is Atala, which is the name of the story. And Atala, I would say, has a very weird feeling because she's attracted to Chactas. She seems to love him, but she can't express it, or she expresses it for a short second, then she feels guilty. So she has this feeling of shame and wanting to do, but can't. Okay? And I don't know what her age is. She's probably younger than Chactas, you know, but this would be considered a woman. Sorry, my book is blowing away from me, and I can't keep it, so I'll keep it tucked in my little corner here. And then finally, we meet, towards the end, we meet Father Aubry, who is a French priest, I would say. Though I guess the more accurate way to perceive it would be as a missionary, a Christian missionary who has come to what we now consider America in order to kind of spread Western values, as well as specifically through the lens of Christianity. Now again, from today's perspective, many people are like, oh, it's so horrible. Just, you gotta see it from first of all, from the author's perspective, okay, Chateaubriand's perspective. Very different world we lived in, okay? And so he's there in what we now consider America to kind of spread the values, these Christian values, okay? Very interesting character too, because it's there's like a scene where he goes off in the mountains and prays and meditates. So it's like a different type of Christianity than what I would today assume. Like I associate more in my head to like kind of Eastern spirituality, but we'll talk about that. So let me just check on the time, because I actually do want to get in those waves. I don't know if you can see them. I'm sure you can hear them. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this part up because I need to swim today. If I don't swim, very upset with you. Then we're gonna talk about the structure, okay? So there's this book, this short story is about 50 to 70 pages, and there's a prologue. There's 4 like scenes or sections. They're not, he doesn't really specify what they're called, but they're definitely sections, I would say. Maybe scenes, we could say. And then there's an epilogue, okay? Now for opera, certainly we have lots of operas that have prologues. For example, Boris Godunov by Mussorgsky has a prologue. Peter Grimes, I believe, has a prologue. Rameau has operas that have prologues. So that's very common. It's very useful to help set it up. But I think it's more common with longer operas, but I don't know for sure. But that's common. I haven't seen an epilogue in an opera, perhaps, but it's a different medium and you have to adapt. Because with opera, we like to end with the highest drama. Versus with literature, it's nice to kind of wrap things up. In opera, no. If you're gonna wrap someone up, it'd be 5 minutes with a grand finale, kicking and screaming, and you know, like jumping up and down. That's how you end. That's how you wrap things up in opera. Not always, but that's how I would like to wrap things up. Quick side note, I have 2 operas actually. My second opera is called Libretto, and for that one I am creating the whole opera from scratch, the story, the libretto. So you'll probably see me talk about that opera as well on this channel, just don't confuse them. That's called Libretto, it's all in French, though maybe I'll do an English version as well. And for this opera, Atala, the story's already created, the text is already written, though I will be adapting the text to be an opera. I will be adapting this text for the libretto. The libretto is a script. So in a way, there is a creative aspect in the libretto writing. Perhaps I may even have to write some of the dialogue if I feel necessary, but I prefer not to, just for my first opera. The next section, we will talk about we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about the story, And just one thing to note, that for this opera, well, I'll tell you in a second, sir. Second part.